Chidinma prepared soup for the next day, pouring a few drops of poison and mixing it carefully. In a small village, a sweet and loving young girl named Suzy lived with her widowed mother, Jane. Jane was known for her kindness and generosity despite their poverty. They shared a peaceful life filled with love. Suzy, Jane's only daughter, cherished every moment with her mother, not knowing that misfortune would soon strike. One day, news traveled through the dusty village. Suzy's father, whom everyone thought was gone forever, had returned. He wasn't alone. With him was his new wife, Chidinma, a woman of striking beauty with long black hair that shone in the sunlight and a charming smile that attracted attention. But her cold, stone-like eyes hid a dark truth. Suzy, who was 14 years old, welcomed her father with joy, hoping to have a complete family again. Jane was more careful, hugging Suzy and whispering, "Be careful, my darling. Things aren't always what they seem." Chidinma moved into their modest house, bringing colorful fabrics, sweet fruits, and promises of happiness. "We'll be a real family," she repeated with a smile. The neighbors were impressed by her elegance, but Jane felt uncomfortable. Chidinma asked too many questions about their life and watched Jane too closely when she cooked. Suzy saw nothing wrong. She wanted to believe in this new life. However, behind closed doors, Chidinma changed. When no one was looking, her smile disappeared and she gave Jane hateful looks. One night, Suzy overheard Chidinma talking to herself under the moonlight. "This house will be mine," she whispered from the shadows. Suzy shivered but said nothing, thinking she must have misunderstood. Suzy's father seemed blinded by Chidinma. He laughed with her and ignored Jane's quiet warnings. As days passed, Chidinma began causing trouble. She told neighbors that Jane was cold and didn't accept her. Some villagers began to doubt Jane's goodness. Chidinma was clever. She knew how to use words to control people. She gave gifts to some and complimented others while slowly pushing Jane away. Suzy saw her mother worrying but didn't know how to help. "Don't worry," said Jane, stroking Suzy's hair. "Love always wins in the end." But Chidinma had other plans. She didn't just want to take Jane's place in people's hearts, she wanted Jane gone forever. In her trunk, hidden under clothes, she kept a small bottle of colorless liquid. This poison, bought from a shady merchant, was her secret weapon. Every night she imagined using it, waiting patiently like a snake in the grass. Despite their doubts, Suzy and Jane couldn't imagine the horrible plan taking shape. Chidinma was now settled in the house, perfectly playing the role of a loving woman. She laughed with neighbors, helped at the market, and complimented Suzy in front of everyone. But under this mask, her heart was black with jealousy. She hated Jane, this sweet woman who inspired love and respect. Jane was everything Chidinma was not: sincere, generous, and loved. Chidinma wanted to be the only one to shine in this house, the only one in Suzy's father's heart and in the village. Each of Jane's smiles and every kind word she spoke fueled Chidinma's anger. Chidinma spent her days watching Jane, noting her habits. When she cooked, when she fetched water, when she sat down, she was looking for a way to strike without being suspected. "Why does everyone love her so much?" Chidinma muttered, clenching her fists. Her jealousy grew like a storm. She couldn't bear to see Suzy run to her mother for a hug or hear villagers praise Jane's goodness. She wanted to destroy this love, this light that outshone her. One evening, alone in her room, Chidinma took out the poison. She turned it between her fingers, a cruel smile on her lips. This expensive liquid was undetectable. A few drops would be enough to make Jane disappear without leaving any trace. Chidinma imagined the house without Jane. She, Chidinma, would be the undisputed mistress. Suzy's father, weak and easily manipulated, would obey her. Suzy, too young to resist, would have to follow her rules. The plan was perfect. To avoid suspicion, Chidinma showed extra kindness. She gave Jane a scarf, saying, "This is for you, dear. You deserve so much." Jane politely accepted but didn't wear it, as her instinct warned her to be careful. Annoyed by this caution, Chidinma decided to act quickly. She started getting closer to the kitchen, offering to help. "Let me prepare meals and let you rest," she said with a sweet smile. Jane, not wanting to create conflict, let her help but watched her every move. One night, Chidinma found the perfect opportunity. Jane, exhausted, had gone to bed early. Chidinma prepared soup for the next day, pouring a few drops of poison and mixing it carefully. "Soon everything will be mine," she whispered. She put the pot away and went to bed, her heart racing with excitement. She already imagined Suzy's tears, the village's confusion, and her own fake sadness when she announced Jane's illness. Suzy felt something wasn't right. She noticed Chidinma's sneaky looks and calculated moves. She talked to her mother, who replied, "Let's pray, my daughter. The truth always comes out in the end." But the truth would have to wait. Chidinma's plan was advancing like a shadow ready to strike. The poison was in the soup, the trap was set, and Jane's fate was sealed. Suzy, without knowing it, was about to lose the person she loved most in the world. Chidinma's jealousy was about to destroy everything. The house, once filled with laughter, became a place of silence and fear. Jane, Suzy's beloved mother, began feeling unwell. It started with strange tiredness. She, normally so energetic, struggled to get up in the morning. "It's nothing, my darling," she said to Suzy with a weak smile. But soon pain came. Her face grew pale, her hands trembled. Worried, Suzy ran to get water and herbs, hoping to help her mother. Chidinma played her part perfectly. She pretended to be concerned, placing her hand on Jane's forehead. "You should rest more," she said softly, but her eyes shone with cruel joy. The poison she had put in the soup was working. Each day, Jane ate a small portion, and each day her body weakened. Chidinma made sure no one suspected anything. She threw away leftover food to avoid questions and told villagers that Jane had a rare disease. Village healers came one after another. They examined Jane and shook their heads. "I don't understand," said one. "It's as if her body is dying," added another. They gave her herbal teas and said prayers, but nothing worked. Suzy cried silently, holding her mother's hand. "Don't leave me, Mom," she whispered. Jane, despite her weakness, stroked Suzy's hair. "I will always be with you, Suzy," she replied with a trembling voice. Chidinma watched from afar, satisfied. She had planned every detail. The slow, discreet poison left no trace. She continued to manipulate Suzy's father, telling him that Jane was too fragile and that he needed to accept the inevitable. Overwhelmed by her lies, he began staying away from Jane, leaving Suzy alone to face this tragedy. Chidinma became even nicer to the neighbors. She offered them food and spoke of her poor sister-in-law with fake tears. Everyone praised her kindness, not knowing she was the cause of it all. One night, Jane's condition worsened. She could no longer get up. Suzy stayed by her side, tirelessly praying. "God save my mother," she begged. Jane, feeling the end coming, took her daughter's hand. "Suzy, be strong. Don't let anyone break your heart." These words were weak but full of love. Suzy sobbed, unable to imagine a world without her mother. At midnight, Jane closed her eyes forever. Her last breath escaped in a heartbreaking silence. Suzy cried out in pain, holding her mother's body. Chidinma entered the room, pretending to cry. "What a tragedy," she said, but her heart danced with joy. The village came to pay tribute to Jane, crying for this good woman. No one suspected Chidinma, who played her role as a grieving relative perfectly. But deep inside, Suzy felt a hidden truth. She didn't know yet that Chidinma's poison had destroyed everything. Alone and orphaned at 14, Suzy was about to discover her stepmother's real face. The nightmare was just beginning, and Jane's death was only the start of long suffering. After Jane's death, Suzy's house became a place of despair. Chidinma, who had hidden her true nature, removed her mask of kindness. Barely was Jane buried when Chidinma turned Suzy into a slave. She gave her harsh orders, waking her before dawn to sweep, wash clothes, and carry heavy water. "Hurry up, lazy girl," Chidinma would yell with a cruel smile. Suzy, still in shock from losing her mother, obeyed with tears in her eyes. Chidinma didn't just make Suzy work hard, she also starved her. In a house full of food, Suzy received only crumbs leftovers. "You don't deserve better," said Chidinma, sometimes throwing food on the ground to humiliate her. Suzy grew thin, with hollow cheeks and dull eyes. She hid her hunger, fearing Chidinma. If Chidinma wasn't happy with how Suzy washed a plate or swept the floor, her hand would strike. "You're useless," she would yell. Suzy's father, manipulated by Chidinma, saw nothing. Chidinma told him that Suzy was disobedient and refused to work. He believed her lies and grew distant from his daughter, leaving Chidinma free to do as she pleased. Suzy, once joyful, became quiet. She avoided people's eyes, ashamed of her misery. Neighbors noticed her condition, but Chidinma was too clever. She told them Suzy was difficult since her mother's death, and many believed her. Some, out of fear or indifference, looked away. Each day was hell. Chidinma invented new humiliations. She forced Suzy to sleep on wet straw in the yard, even in the rain. "A girl like you doesn't deserve a real bed," she said. Wet and cold, Suzy would curl up, holding an old scarf of her mother's, her only memory. This cloth, with Jane's smell, gave her strength to endure. "Mum, help me," she whispered. Chidinma took pleasure in breaking Suzy. She interrupted her rare moments of rest, forcing her to work until exhaustion. Once, Suzy, too weak, dropped a pot. Chidinma slapped her so hard she fell. "You clumsy fool," she shouted. With her face burning, Suzy picked up the pot without a word. But deep inside her, a small flame still burned. The love of her mother, her memories, her faith. These things Chidinma could not take away. The village, though manipulated, began to whisper. Some saw the bruises on Suzy's arms, her alarming thinness. But Chidinma had an answer for everything. She would cry in front of them, saying, "This girl makes my life impossible." Her cunning worked. Suzy alone had no one to turn to. However, she continued to pray, believing her mother watched over her. She didn't know that this faith would soon trigger extraordinary events. Chidinma, in her power, didn't suspect that she had awakened a force much greater than herself, a harm that would turn against her. Soon, Suzy, despite her suffering, would find light in the darkness. Suzy lived a nightmare under Chidinma's tyranny. Every day she worked until exhaustion, her body bruised and her heart broken. At night, when Chidinma was asleep, Suzy found refuge in a corner of the yard under an old mango tree, far from prying eyes. There, she let her tears flow freely. She hugged her mother's scarf against her face and whispered, "Mum, why did you leave me?" Her sobs were lost in the wind, but she continued to pray. "God save me. Mum, come to my aid." These moments of loneliness were her only respite. Under the stars, Suzy spoke to her mother as if she were there. She told her about her days, her fears, her hopes. "Chidinma is so mean, Mom. She hurts me, but I'm staying strong for you." These prayers, full of pain and faith, seemed to float in the air, as if Jane's spirit could hear them. Suzy firmly believed that even dead, her mother would never abandon her. The neighbors saw Suzy's suffering. Some, passing by the house, noticed her red eyes and arms covered with bruises. An old woman, a long-time neighbor, slipped her a piece of bread. "Here, little one. Eat quickly," she whispered. Grateful, Suzy devoured the bread in hiding, but this woman dared not do more. Chidinma had a sharp tongue and a fearsome reputation. She intimidated the whole village with her lies and charm. When someone asked questions about Suzy, she would sigh, pretending to be exhausted. "This girl is ungrateful. She refuses to listen to me since her mother's death." The troubled villagers didn't know what to think. Some thought Suzy was rebelling out of grief. Others, more suspicious, stayed silent for fear of Chidinma. Chidinma had created a perfect web, trapping Suzy in a world of silence. However, Suzy didn't lose hope. Every night she knelt under the mango tree and prayed fervently. She asked God for strength and her mother to send her a sign. "I know you're there, Mom," she murmured, eyes fixed on the stars. These prayers were her anchor, her means of surviving. They reminded her that Jane's love was stronger than Chidinma's cruelty. One night, while the moon shone brightly, Suzy felt a strange warmth envelop her. She closed her eyes, exhausted, and whispered a final prayer. "Mom, if you hear me, show me a path." At that moment, a gentle breeze caressed her face, carrying a familiar scent, that of the flowers Jane had loved. Suzy opened her eyes in surprise. Nothing had changed around her, but her heart beat stronger. Was it a sign? She fell asleep, clutching the scarf, unaware that her prayers had awakened an invisible force. Jane's spirit, touched by her daughter's pain, was preparing to intervene. Chidinma, asleep in the house, didn't know that her days of cruelty were numbered. Suzy's tears, worn by faith, were about to shake the walls of this cursed house. Exhausted by chores and Chidinma's cruelty, Suzy lived in a world of pain. One night, as she fell asleep hungry and cold under the mango tree, something extraordinary happened. In her sleep, she had a dream so clear it seemed real. Her mother Jane appeared to her, dressed in a bright white dress that seemed woven from light. Her face, soft and familiar, radiated love. Amazed, Suzy felt tears rolling down her cheeks. "My darling, don't cry," whispered Jane, her voice as warm as ever. She approached and stroked Suzy's face, wiping away her tears. "Your ordeal is coming to an end. The truth will come out, and justice will be done." Suzy, upset, stretched out her arms to hug her mother, but her fingers touched only air. "Mom, don't leave me," she cried. Jane smiled gently. "I'm still with you, Suzy. Be strong. Chidinma's wickedness will be punished." Then Jane's image faded, leaving a scent of flowers in the air. Suzy woke with a start, heart pounding. The yard was silent. The moon still shone. She pressed her mother's scarf against her chest, confused. Was it just a dream or a message? She felt a warmth in her heart, as if Jane had really touched her. For the first time in months, Suzy felt a fragile hope. "Mom, if that was you, tell me," she whispered, eyes raised to the sky. The next day, Suzy went back to work, but something had changed. She carried a new strength within her, a certainty that her mother was watching over her. Chidinma's insults about a poorly washed plate didn't hurt as much. "You're worthless," Chidinma yelled. Suzy lowered her head, but in her mind she repeated Jane's words. "The truth will come out." She didn't know how, but she believed in it. Chidinma noticed nothing. She continued to rule the house, sure of her power. She forced Suzy to scrub the floor until her hands bled, laughing at her weakness. But Suzy, strengthened by her dream, found courage in her pain. She prayed silently, asking her mother to keep her promise. "Show me a sign, Mom," she whispered while washing clothes. The neighbors were starting to talk. An old woman who had known Jane noticed the new glow in Suzy's eyes. "This little one has something in her," she said to a friend. But no one dared to confront Chidinma. Her sworn tongue and lies were frightening. Yet Suzy's hope grew. She felt her mother was near, that her prayers had been heard. That evening, falling asleep, Suzy whispered a last prayer. "Mom, if you're there, do something." She didn't know that her dream was just the beginning. Jane's spirit, awakened by her daughter's love and pain, was preparing to act. In the house, an invisible energy was starting to manifest. Chidinma didn't know her reign was coming to an end. Suzy's dream had lit a spark, and soon this spark would become a fire that would consume Chidinma's wickedness. After Suzy's dream, something changed in the house. A strange atmosphere settled in, as if the air itself held a secret. The next morning, as Suzy swept the yard, a pot fell from a shelf for no reason. The noise made Chidinma jump. "Suzy, what did you break?" she shouted. But Suzy, at the other end of the yard, hadn't touched anything. She lowered her head, hiding a shiver. Was this the sign she had been waiting for? Other strange events followed. Doors slammed on their own. At night, footsteps echoed in the house as if someone was walking. At first annoyed, Chidinma began to worry. "It's just the wind," she muttered, but her hands trembled. Once, as she was setting plates, a mirror broke on the ground. She screamed, accusing Suzy. "It's you, you little pest," she yelled. Suzy, terrified, swore she had nothing to do with it. She thought of her dream, of her mother. The strange happenings intensified. One night, Chidinma woke up sweating, certain she had heard a voice whispering her name. She turned on a lamp, but the room was empty, yet a shadow passed in the corridor, quick as a breath. "Who's there?" Chidinma cried, her heart racing. She ran to check the door. It was locked. For the first time, she felt a fear she couldn't explain. It was nothing, she told herself, but she no longer slept well. Suzy observed everything in silence. She didn't understand these events, but they gave her hope. Each noise, each moved object seemed like a message from her mother. She prayed even harder, clutching Jane's scarf. "Mom, is it you?" she whispered under the mango tree. That night, a gentle breeze caressed her face, carrying the scent of flowers Jane had loved. Suzy smiled, tears in her eyes. She knew her mother was there. Chidinma lost her confidence. She yelled at Suzy more, as if to hide her fear. "Work instead of daydreaming, you fool." But her eyes constantly searched dark corners. The neighbors began to notice her behavior. "Chidinma seems nervous," some whispered. Others spoke of sounds coming from the house. An old woman who believed in spirits declared, "It's Jane. She's not at peace." But no one dared to interfere. Chidinma tried to reassure herself. She consulted a medicine man who gave her a charm. "It will keep away bad spirits," he promised. But the charm changed nothing. The strange events continued. Shadows in the yard, whispers in the night, objects moving on their own. Exhausted, Chidinma began talking to herself. "Leave me alone," she shouted into empty space. When Suzy heard this, her heart lightened. Her mother was keeping her promise. These supernatural signs were just the beginning. Jane's spirit, awakened by Suzy's prayers, was gaining strength. Chidinma, blinded by her cruelty, didn't see the trap closing. She still thought she controlled the house, but a presence more powerful than she was taking over. Suzy, through her faith, awaited the moment when the truth would come out. The walls of the house, witnesses to so much suffering, were about to reveal Chidinma's secret. The strange happenings in the house became unbearable for Chidinma. She no longer slept, haunted by nightmares and constant noises. One night, while the moon cast a weak light through the window, Chidinma woke with a start, covered in cold sweat. A freezing presence filled the room. She turned on a lamp, but the light flickered. Then, in a dark corner, a figure appeared. It was Jane, her pale face and eyes full of anger. Chidinma screamed, backing against the wall. "No, you're dead," she cried. But Jane's ghost advanced, floating slightly above the floor. Her deep, resonant voice filled the room. "Chidinma," she said, "you took my life. You broke my daughter. Your crime will not go unpunished." Trembling, Chidinma tried to deny it. "I did nothing. It's not true." But Jane stretched out a ghostly hand, and images flooded Chidinma's mind. The poison vial, the soup, the days she watched Jane dying. Chidinma fell to her knees, shaking with sobs. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kill you." But Jane was unforgiving. "You acted out of jealousy and wickedness. You made my Suzy suffer, my light. Now you will pay." An icy wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lamp. Chidinma, certain her end had come, covered in fear. But Jane vanished, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Chidinma spent the night trembling, unable to close her eyes. The next day, she was unrecognizable, her hair disheveled, her eyes wild. She looked broken. When Suzy saw her, she understood something had happened. She continued her chores, but her heart beat with hope. The neighbors, alerted by Chidinma's screams in the night, began asking questions. "What's happening in that house?" one woman asked. Chidinma, panicked, lied. "It's nothing, just a nightmare," she said, but no one believed her. That evening, the villagers gathered in front of the house. Chidinma, cornered, came out to face them. But before she could speak, a violent wind blew, and a voice echoed as if coming from nowhere. "Confess your crime, Chidinma." It was Jane, invisible but present. Chidinma collapsed to the ground. "It's me. I poisoned Jane. I killed her out of jealousy," she shouted, tears flowing. The village fell silent in shock. The truth, hidden for so long, had finally come to light. The village elders spoke up. "Chidinma, you have committed a crime against the gods," declared the chief. The horrified neighbors turned against her. Suzy, who had heard everything, cried tears of both pain and relief. Her mother had kept her promise. Chidinma, broken, could no longer manipulate anyone. Her mask had fallen, revealing the truth in broad daylight. Her confrontation with Jane's ghost had changed everything. Once powerful, she was now just a shadow. The shocked villagers began to look at Suzy differently. They now saw her suffering and her strength. Jane's spirit, by revealing the crime, had freed her daughter. But the story wasn't over. Chidinma would soon face the consequences of her actions, and Suzy would finally see light after so much darkness. After confessing her crime in front of the village, Chidinma became an outcast. The villagers, horrified by what she had done, gathered to decide her fate. The chief, a wise man, spoke. "Chidinma, you poisoned Jane, a woman loved by all. You made Suzy, an innocent child, suffer. You don't deserve to live among us." The elders agreed and the sentence was passed. Chidinma would be banished. She would have to leave the village forever, taking nothing with her. Once proud, Chidinma was now broken. She tried to beg for mercy. "I regret what I did," she cried on her knees, but the villagers, disgusted, turned away. Even Suzy's father, finally aware of his mistakes, refused to defend her. "You destroyed my family," he told her, his voice shaking. Chidinma alone was driven out like a criminal. She left the village under hostile stares, carrying only a small bundle of belongings. In the wilderness far from the houses, she wandered in fear. Each noise, a twig cracking, a breath of wind, reminded her of Jane's ghost. At night, she saw Jane's face in the darkness, her accusing eyes. "Leave me in peace," she would cry, but no one heard her. She talked to herself, begging for a forgiveness that would never come. Animals seemed to avoid her, as if nature itself rejected her. Thorns tore at her clothes. Rivers she crossed seemed colder than they should be. Days became weeks. Hungry and exhausted, Chidinma lost her mind. She whispered meaningless sentences, laughing at times, crying at others. Travelers who passed her said she spoke to shadows, that she saw Jane everywhere. "She follows me, she wants me dead," Chidinma would say. Some said the earth refused to nourish her, that fruits she found rotted in her hands. Nature, as if touched by Jane's anger, seemed to judge Chidinma. In the village, people talked about her fate. "It's spirit justice," said an old woman. "She got what she deserved." Children avoided the wilderness, fearing they might meet Chidinma. No one knew what became of her, but rumors said she lived like a wild animal, haunted by her crimes. Some thought she had died alone under a tree. Others believed she still wandered, prisoner of her madness. Suzy heard these stories without joy. She didn't want Chidinma to suffer, she only wanted peace. Her stepmother's downfall, though deserved, wouldn't bring her mother back. Still, she felt lighter. The villagers, ashamed of having believed Chidinma's lies, began approaching Suzy. They offered her food and spoke gently to her. Suzy, shy at first, found a little human warmth again. Chidinma's end marked a turning point. The village had learned a lesson. Evil, however well hidden, is eventually punished. Chidinma, who thought she would rule through cunning, was left with nothing. Her exile, her loneliness, her madness, these were the price of her cruelty. But for Suzy, this was only the beginning of a new chapter. Free from Chidinma's shadow, she would soon rebuild her life, carried by Jane's eternal love. After Chidinma's banishment, Suzy could finally breathe again. A maternal aunt named Betty, a sweet and loving woman, welcomed her into her home. "Come, my little one. You're home now," she said, arms wide open. Suzy, still fragile, wept with gratitude. With Betty, she found a warm bed, hearty meals, and most importantly, love. Betty, who had known Jane well, often spoke to Suzy about her mother. "Your mum was like a star," she would say. "She still shines in you." In the first days, Suzy remained quiet, haunted by memories. But little by little, with Betty's patience, she found color in life again. She started to laugh, to dream again. Betty encouraged her to learn, to believe in herself. She taught Suzy to sew and cook, but most importantly, to believe in her strength. "You are strong, Suzy. Your mother gave you her courage," she would repeat. Touched, Suzy would clutch Jane's scarf, feeling her presence in every kind word. The village changed its shameful attitude toward her. Neighbors came to visit, bringing fruits, fabrics, and words of apology. "I'm sorry, little one, we should have seen the truth," an old woman told her. With a light heart, Suzy forgave them. She didn't want to hold on to resentment. She wanted to honor her mother by living with love, as Jane had taught her. Years passed, and Suzy grew up. At 20, she had become a beautiful and wise young woman, respected by all. She helped Betty at the market, where her smile attracted customers. People would say, "She is Jane's daughter, a blessing." Humble, Suzy continued to pray every evening, thanking her mother for her protection. She firmly believed that Jane was watching over her like a star in the sky. One day, Suzy met a young man named Tom, a kind craftsman and hard worker. He fell in love with her sweetness and strength. After a year, they married in a simple ceremony surrounded by villagers. Radiant, Suzy felt her mother's presence that day. she started a family, giving birth to 2 children, a girl and a boy. She taught them Jane's values: patience, truth, and love. Every year, Suzy held a small ceremony for her mother. She lit a candle, placed flowers, and told her children Jane's story. "Your grandmother was an angel. She saved me even after her death." Her amazed children promised to be as good as she was. Suzy smiled, knowing her mother's legacy would live on through them. The village never forgot this story. Elders told it to young people, saying, "Evil never wins. Love and justice always triumph in the end." By living happily, Suzy proved these words true. She became a symbol of hope. That light can be reborn from darkness. Every night, looking at the stars, she whispered, "Thank you, Mom." Jane's spirit at peace watched over her, a bond of love that nothing, not even death, could break. Suzy had transformed her pain into strength, and her story inspired everyone who heard it. The moral: even the best hidden evil never remains unpunished. Justice, whether from humans or a higher power, always prevails in the end. And a mother's love transcends death, protecting what she cherishes most. If you enjoy this story, please like it and leave a comment in the comments section for more stories. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support.